How and why people migrate is an important and controversial policy question in recent times. The refugee crisis has received much attention, but there are other larger and perhaps more important migration patterns across Europe that have been not investigated. So in my paper I look at internal migration in the European Union and Norway, Iceland and Switzerland. These migration patterns have been changed dramatically in recent times, with particular importance of three policies that affected the choice to migrate across countries. And these policies that we look at are the freedom of movement, occupational licensing, and taxation. So freedom of movement reduced migration costs since migrants could move across countries without having to apply for a work permit, without extra fees for foreigners or licensing requirements. And this is where occupational licensing comes into play, which is very important, especially for the self-employed, like plumbers or joiners and medical doctors or other types of workers. And the effects of reducing migration costs by introducing freedom of movement are very large. So moving from restricted movement to freedom of movement affects migration flows by almost doubling them. So this important change has been overlooked so far, where the focus was on the refugees who only have quantitatively numbers of about 1.3 million in 2015, which is the peak of the refugee crisis. In comparison to this, the movement across borders for internal migration was about 2 million persons in that date. And the total stock of persons in 2015 who live in another European country than their country of origin is 12 million. So this is an important, sizable migration pattern that has never been looked at. Now, on top of that, tax policy can interact with freedom of movement and occupational licensing rules, because if a state cuts their taxes on income, for example, on personal income, this could attract people to move into their country. Or conversely, if a state increases the tax rate, this could push people out of the country to move somewhere else to get a higher net of tax rate. And what we find is that tax policy actually has effects, important effects on migration across jurisdictions in Europe. And these effects are also sizable. They mean that if you increase the net of tax rate by 1%, migration increases by also about 1% in terms of flows. At the same time, if you look at the migration flows, you see a lot of migration has been going on from the Eastern European states. And these states were also those states that had an unprecedented replacement of progressive tax systems with flat tax systems. So many Bulgarians, for example, moved to countries like Spain or Germany, and many Polish people moved to the UK and Sweden. However, at the same time, their countries cut the tax rates for personal income. For example, Bulgaria has the lowest tax rate in Europe with 10%, and these massive tax changes could not reduce the population drain from these countries. So overall, the effects of freedom of movement and tax policy have to be considered together.